I'm Jim Leo, and this is The Skinny.
From the Fatheads Eyewear Studios in Speedway, Indiana, this is The Skinny. Brought to you by Toyota, Rhino Classifieds, General Tire, and Dream Giveaway. This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by General Tire. It's more than just a slogan. Anywhere is possible with General Tire. General Tire's Grabber X3 mud terrain tire offers aggressive styling and is engineered for durability with innovative performance features that are ready to carry you through extreme mud, dirt, and rock-covered terrain. For extreme traction that's ready for anything and rugged styling to match, look no further than the Grabber X3. Make your anywhere possible by visiting GeneralTire.com today. Today on The Skinny is one of those days when you know when your guest walks in, you're just going to feel inferior. You're going to immediately feel judged, especially whenever he looks at someone like Rico and myself, and he'll immediately, without saying a word, eye us up and down and say, yep, you guys clearly are not following the plan.
Total
You
plan.
like to eat and you don't work out.
Do you think he happened to notice the container of chicken in the break
fried
room?
chicken in the
fried
break room?
chicken in the break room.
Well, not to mention the pepperoni pieces and the cheese. I mean, the healthy stuff.
Those are healthy.
Low
Very
carb.
healthy. Oh,
Low
yeah,
carb.
Yeah. But the fried chicken. So if I start nodding off here in a minute, you'll know who had the fried chicken at what.
So for a lot of people out there, the myth for so many years is that race car drivers were not athletes. Well, I got news for you. The people that sit behind the wheel, certainly of an Indy car, an F1, I mean, even the Cup cars these days are some of the best athletes you will ever find in your life. You don't sit inside of a car and pull the G's that they pull for 2.5, 3 hours, and many times in heat in excess of 100 degrees because you're fat and out of shape. Not to mention the last 30 minutes whenever you really need to be attacking and pushing hard.
We're out.
We're out. We're safe. Dude, we can't even get in the car. Well, maybe a Cup car. But, it's amazing. And one of the guys that's responsible for what these athletes are able to accomplish before they ever get inside of the car has joined us here on The Skinny. His name is Jim Leo. Certainly all the people in the industry are very familiar with him. He is the president of PitFit, which is located here in Indy. And much more importantly, he also brought Chester with him, the dog who is located down on the floor. So, he's right in between us now, just chilling out. And, of course, Leo already ground him into the ground, right? Ran him right into the ground.
I'm going to grind him down so he won't make any noise. I mean, the dog hasn't hardly breathed since he got here.
He takes him to the park on a rainy day and makes him walk. How far did you go? 20 miles or something?
Nah, 4.5 miles.
4.5 miles. So, welcome to the show, man. We've already wore you out. We beat you up here for 5 minutes before you let you talk.
Yeah, that's usually how we do things.
I've known Rico a long time. I'm used to it.
He knows the does the program.
I know.
Well, this is all payback for the what the hell's that? Not stair climber.
Oh, Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah. You ever got on one of them?
Is that the one where the stairs just keep?
No, it's rungs.
Oh, no.
I
have not.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably some video he's sold somewhere, like some people needed some entertainment and watch this large individual on that. And here's the thing, it's got like a clutch on the cable that the thing's wrapped around your belt that you put on. So the higher you get up, is it the higher you get up?
The higher you get up, the more the brake releases and the faster you go.
Yeah. So I just stayed at the bottom.
It clearly is a professional piece of equipment because the weight rating must be fairly significant if he allowed you to get on it.
Well, the good part
Jim's
is...
like, let's weigh in. Hold on a minute. Let's check this out.
The good part is that you can't see the people watching you because you're looking in this direction, so they can't tell if you're laughing or filming or making faces or anything like that.
Yeah, rolling in the floor, on
I
the
can
floor,
tell you what they were doing.
Yeah, I clearly.
Same thing they would have been doing if I was on it, trust me.
Yeah.
Let's see how long this lasts.
Yeah, so Jim and I met many years ago. I was trying to think about that a little bit earlier, but the interesting thing of it is we used to help him with some of his stuff. I wouldn't say in the early days, but a ways back, and some of the stuff for the interior of his building, signage, and some of the web stuff, and just it's kind of like when you're you get started and you're like, okay, I'm not really sure which way I'm going. And then you get to the point of, all right, I know where I'm going, but you don't have this, hundreds of $1,000s budget to build all this stuff out. So, and listen, we go through it all the time, building things out. So we helped him out, and then he beat us half to death about every other morning at his facility. So it's a great trade out. I mean, it really, really felt good. And, and I always said, somebody said, oh, you know Dixon? I said, oh, yeah, we used to work out in the same building. I never said together, because that clearly would have been an outright lie, because there's nobody keeping up with that machine. I mean, he's something else, but it was a great experience nevertheless, and did learn a lot from him. But, some of the folks that he had in there, the pit crews that would come in and he would work out, I could kind of keep up with some of those guys. It was usually the guys that were about 65 that drove the truck I could keep up with. So, but anyhow, he has a great staff, and also has a great program there. And so, who are you working with Indy 5 this year? Who have you got?
Well, this year we would be working. We work with Charlie Kimball. Unfortunately, he did not make the race, so that's kind of a bummer. But Scott Dixon, Tony Kanaan, Hinchcliffe, Rossi, Felix Rosenquist, Stefan Wilson, Pietro Fittipaldi. I know I'm missing. I think we have 9 drivers in the 500 this year. So that's
that the most ever?
I think we've had 10 before, and it doesn't matter. I haven't had a driver win this race since Dario in 2008. So I just expect not to have one of our drivers win it. I think we're the jinx for a lot of these drivers. So
that's good.
Hopefully, Dixon was 2008.
Do you want to get
08? Yeah, 08 was Dixon. Yeah, that was.
Do you want to get on the radio and tell him when you're spotting?
Yeah.
Don't think about PitFit.
Yeah, man.
Don't think about PitFit.
It's brutal.
Somebody just said I would rather start from second than I would from the pole. It seems like if you start from the pole, you never win the race. And I'm like, 2019 Pagano. All right.
Yeah.
2008 Dixon.
Yeah, it can happen. It can happen.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's a race of you just you look at the winners of it, and there's been some great champions, and then drivers who basically have won the Indy 500 and not done a whole lot else.
Right.
Buddy Rice, great guy, but Sato, he's won it twice, but he's never going to be in contention to win a championship, and so it varies from year to year who's going to do well in that race, and it comes down to usually it's predictable. It's going to be one of the big 3 teams for the most part, but it's more and more the old days of where another lower tier driver could win the race, come out of left field, so to speak. Those it's hard to find that these days.
Is Simona still working out with you guys?
We haven't worked out with her because she went over. We worked with her back in the Toyota Atlantic days, so we haven't worked out with her in a long time. But yeah, she worked out in our program, and we've had drivers that are in the race. We worked with Will for a long time until he moved down to North Carolina. We worked with Joseph for a long time, Newgard, until he moved down to North Carolina. So we've had.
He's in North Carolina too now.
Now
all the Penske drivers, the whole shop.
Joseph relocated to Nashville. He and his wife actually built a house in Nashville, I think a year or 2 ago. But all the drivers from Penske are in North Carolina.
I remember Newgarden being at your place when we were there, and now his family's got the Robopong, isn't it?
That was his grandfather that invented the Robopong.
Yeah, and then he raced with Robert, right?
He raced with Robert, him and Connor Daly. We actually have a picture of Robert and Connor and Joseph, Jimmy Simpson. I can't remember Eric Bachelart's son.
Elliot
Bachelart.
Yeah.
When they were all kids running junior can, out at Newcastle, nice little group pictures. It's pretty cool to look back at.
That's really cool stuff. Good history.
Yeah, that was they look like little kids too. It's pretty funny how young all of them were. So knowing Robert.
Yeah, I mean they were 13 years old. They were 13, 14 14 years old. Yeah,
is that when you pulled up in your stacker and with your multi-million-dollar motorhome? And
it was. We used to just chuckle. It was so awesome to pull up with a go-kart in the back of a pickup truck, and,
right?
And you had your little handbag of tools, and right out onto the stand, and You know, we got fancy and got a little enclosed trailer. We were moving up in the ranks. You know,
got wild, blew the lawn clippings out of it.
Yeah,
you know, like I used to do back in the day. And
that's where all these kids were, though. You know, pretty cool. And of course, Mark Dismore, president of that track out there, and former IndyCar racer, 24 Hours Daytona racer, and worked with a number of those guys. You know, I mean, Connor was always on his own program, but Newgarden was definitely part of the Newcastle Mark Dismore engine building program. Yeah. So yeah, those kids spent a lot of time out there honing their craft in their early days for sure. It was pretty cool. Pretty cool to look back at now.
Nobody really says that much about Newcastle. I mean, I'm from there, so I mean, it's like
he put it on the map, right? I mean, maybe people around here, but
I think it's actually Spiceland, Indiana. I'm not really sure what they picked.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think that's the exit is the Steve Alford All-American Inn.
Oh yeah, It's got whatever team he's coaching for at the time. It's got their basketball shoe in front of it. I saw when I went home for Mother's Day, I think they got a $39 by the hour special right now. So it's a pretty nice deal. I mean, if you just need to stop in for a few, I guess. So just throwing that out there.
We sat and enjoyed a couple there with Mark Dismore. It was kind of fun. He's a great cat.
His dad was even more classic.
Yeah,
Emerson.
I never met him, but boy, there is no shortage of stories of Emerson.
Dude,
really?
Oh yeah, he was.
Did you ever?
He was
meet
a feisty dude, man.
Oh,
he was a feisty.
And he was a big dude. I mean, he was a tall and huge in stature. I mean, big.
Really?
Big, oh yeah.
Because neither one of Mark and Mark G, neither one of them are really that big.
Exactly, but you know, Mark, you have to kind of punch him to get him to talk, whatever.
Right.
Not Emerson. I mean, he was. I remember. So I was racing go-karts as a kid, and I walk in there one time to buy something, and I'm looking at it, and he goes, "What are you buying that for?" I'm like, "Aren't you in the business to sell stuff? I mean, would you care why I'm trying to buy it?" He goes, "You don't need that." I mean, he knew I was a broke-ass kid is one reason. He knew I didn't have any money, and I was doing it all on my own, and it was my passion that's what I wanted to do, and he saw it, and he was just like, "You don't need to buy that. That isn't what you need to run that." I mean, he was just totally telling me that. So it's just interesting. I mean, and he was always, he was rough and gruff to a lot of people, but I liked his style. He was just a really, really neat old guy. But I mean, he gave Tony Stewart his first gig, really.
Yeah.
Where Tony really became amazing at in the go-kart business. And I mean, Tara Armstrong, she used to, Brad's wife, she used to run the office for him, and he she was talking about how Tony didn't have a job and he was driving for Comet. And so Tony was doing inventory with Tara, and she says, "Here I got this stinky boy working with me with these beat up shoes." And, she's older than him, and it's just hilarious listening to her and them banter back and forth to this day because they both were big parts of Tony's life growing up, Brad and Tara. So
I never knew that that Emerson gave him that shot. I mean, when we were racing out there, Tony would always come out once or twice a year, and we'd see him standing out there.
Yeah.
And I just figured it was a relationship with Mark Sr., and I had no idea that
I can't remember who
deeper than that.
They had pros, right? Comet always had their pros, like Andy Keller was one of them at one point, and I can't think of the other ones, but Tony and Mark were kind of the same era, if you will, around that same era. Mark is a little bit older, but
right.
But I mean, he told me when Emerson hired him, he goes, "Go pick out one of the suits. We'll have a cart for you." It's just like that was the way he did stuff. It was never like, "Hey, what do you think about driving for?" No. Just go pick out a suit, So
like you say, just rough around the edges. That's
and the greatest guy ever. I mean,
right?
I really, really feel like he would have. I mean, he gave a lot of people a lot of stuff, and getting there. So to see Mark carry on the deal, like what he's got out there. I mean, that's what Comet Kart should have had a long time ago, because they were, they were tough. And I mean, they were the ones, they weren't, I can't think of the other kart names, all the different ones and this and that. But so it was interesting. But I mean, like I said, that was a big empty field when I was growing up. So there was nothing there. And for him to have that vision, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and he put it all out there too. I mean, that was a big loan. I've talked to him a number of times. That was a big loan, and he just kept scrapping. I mean, you were talking about it before as a business owner and everything you have to go through, and he didn't. People think, oh, Mark Dismore ran IndyCar and Daytona and all this stuff. He's a millionaire, and he was like everybody else, man. He had to go to the bank, borrow a big chunk of money, and I'm sure he had some equity in it. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, talk about sweat equity to make ends meet every day of the week. Those guys were just ripping.
And you're going to go tell the bank, oh, by the way, I'm going to start this go-kart track.
Right. Yeah, knowing right off the bat that you're going to be down probably 4 or 5 months a year, right? I mean, you can't run it in bad weather.
Right.
It's not an indoor karting center.
No.
And something like that, it's unlike perhaps in other circumstances, he continues to evolve that facility, continues to make it better and adding more and adding this. And so I think it's obviously a world-class operation. It is worldwide known. And that's amazing.
Is that right?
No question.
Really? Wow.
No, in North America, there just aren't many tracks like that.
Oh, no.
And so that's, people know about it.
Tony and I were talking about when we would race the Richmond street race. Well, part of that street race back in the day was you had to go over a set of railroad tracks before you turned left, and you were in the air. You were in the air with your wheels cut. So when you landed, it would take you the right way because, I mean, I didn't have much problem with my flying too far, but I mean, Tony and them were a hell of a lot smaller than me, so they could definitely get some more air. But those street races were wild, and there was one closed circuit that we ran on, and it was up in Muncie, and it was at the FOP. I don't think
I
that
credit
exists anymore.
my son competes in sports cars, and I credit his street racing and the go-karts as to really helping him out. He went professional, his first professional series 2010 with the Pirelli World Challenge Series at the time, and I think they were 23 years old at that point in time, and he went on to win. I think he won 5 races that year, and he won the championship, Rookie of the Year, and won the championship. But I remember us starting off at St. Pete. Went to St. Pete. We went to Long Beach. I think we raced in Toronto, and those streetcar races where they had walls on either side and curbs never fazed him because he had competed in karts on street races, so it didn't rattle him. It wasn't new. And I remember for so many of the other competitors to get in between those concrete walls with no runoff, no room for a mistake, and they started holding back just a little bit, and the guys that had full confidence went for it. And I'm convinced to this day that it came from street racing and karts, because we all know when you hit a curb in a kart, it's a bad day.
Yeah, you're not one to get near those.
Let's pause for a moment here to take a quick break. This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by Toyota.
So, Leo, where did it all start?
It started back in Detroit at a diesel engine plant.
Wow.
I mean, worked for Roger Penske at Detroit Diesel Corporation, and I ran or part of a big wellness program that the UAW had jointly funded, and at the time, this was in 93, 92, the sport IndyCar was huge. I mean, NASCAR was still, it was big. It was in the Rusty Wallace days, but they hadn't won championships, and there wasn't really a lot of involvement in other series. So that was the time when Emerson was driving, and Allenser Jr. and Paul Tracy was, I think, in his second or third year. And so what would happen is they would race at Detroit. They would race in Portland. The truckies would bring the trucks back straight to Detroit, and they would work on the cars all week long in the garage area of our wellness center, which is huge. And so I began doing stuff with their pit crew and doing cholesterol testing and things like that. And I had this idea to pitch working with the pit crew to make them better. And I wrote a note to Roger, and, you know, I always tell the story to younger kids and they don't understand it. I said, you know, back in the mid-90s, emails just didn't exist.
Right. Text, emails.
You didn't have it.
No.
You wrote a note, you typed on a typewriter. And so I wrote him a note, interoffice note to him, and, you know, saying, hey, Mr. Penske, I'd like to do this. And he sent back a note that said, go for it, on his letterhead. I wish I would have kept that. I would have framed it. And that was kind of the start of it. So I began working with the IndyCar team at the end of '93. I would fly to Reading, Pennsylvania every month. I designed a gym for them. And I'd work with not really the drivers, but I would go there and do all this, you know, training, and built a gym for them, and work on pit stops with them. And I learned how to do pit stops, and just ingrain myself into the culture. And there wasn't, you know, again, with the internet, wasn't there.
Right.
It just wasn't there. So it was a lot of trial and error. You learned a lot of things. You ask a lot of questions. Guys like Rick Reineman. I mean, there's guys that have been retired now that, you know, I learned so much from. John Boozlog and all these guys. And they would set up a tire on a wall mount, and I would set a stopwatch, and I would basically take an air gun and I would change tires for 30 minutes straight, just to understand. And then the next day I couldn't move, and I knew damn well what muscles to work and that kind of a thing. So we just worked on that. And the timing was great because that was the year that they won the Indy 500 with the pushrod engine, you know, the beast. And they won the series, and they swept almost all the races. It was almost bad for the sport because it was 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I kept doing that with them for a couple of years. And then I had my job at Detroit Diesel, back and forth. And then I just realized that there's got to be more to this. So I started branching out a little more. Was hired by PacWest Racing to be their team physio in '97, and moved here. And, you know, from there I did that for a couple of years. And, you know, I knew, though, my job was so new that if push came to shove and dollars got tight,
you were out.
I'm out.
Oh, yeah. You were done.
So
right.
I used that 2-year agreement to basically lay the groundwork to work with other groups and get the word out to things, and basically develop a bigger plan for the future. And, you know, and then Scott Dixon came along, which is huge. And I worked with him in '99 a little bit with Stefan Johansson. He basically won the championship in lights, and then the next year, lo and behold, I went on just a contract with this team in 2001, I think it was, and lo and behold, 4 or 5 months later, the team walked into a conference room. They said, "Okay, we're shutting down." Like that day, fired 50 people on the spot. But I was already out the door. I had already started working with other people, so it was, you know, I knew what I knew.
Great
what was
insight.
Yeah. I just knew. I knew that they need engineers, they need drivers, they need fuel, they need truckies. They don't need a physio. They really don't. So, and that just led to growing things and getting more involved in other series and other drivers. And there just wasn't a whole lot out there. There wasn't a lot of what I was doing out there. So I was learning a lot on my own and making great relationships, partnering with people and getting to know people and having success with drivers, and then it just continued to grow from there. And now, you know, I look at it now, and it's commonplace. I mean, every driver's blowing up his Instagram with his abs, and he's working out and doing this and all this. Back then, I mean...
Yeah, what was that psyche? I mean, you had Steve Kinzer back then, you know, chunky, smoking cigarettes, you know, ripping around, killing everybody in a sprint car. And it goes back to what I said at the top of the show, right? The myth was they're not really athletes. You know, they're sitting in the car wheeling around. But when did you see it really starting to take shape, and meaning that the psyche of the drivers was, they started realizing, oh, this guy being in better shape than I am is giving him an advantage. When did it really start to switch?
It kind of picked up steam in the, you know, probably right when I got started. The timing was impeccable, but you started seeing this influx of these F1 drivers coming over. You know, Gilles de Ferran and Alex Zanardi and Christian Fittipaldi. And they had been raised on this thing with Ayrton Senna that you all trained. And so every team had, you know, a physio that worked with the drivers to the track, looked after all their needs, trained with them, did all these things. And so that's kind of how they're raised over there. That's the culture, the European culture. So the drivers started coming over here and just kicking ass. And and they're in great shape. And I remember Bobby Rahal lost like 30 pounds because he realized I've got to do something. I got to do something different here. And so
he shaved his mustache.
Shaved his mustache.
That's what did it.
Yeah, he took out his wallet. That's 30 pounds right there. And so you started seeing more and more of it. And I was in the right place at the right time. I had great connections at Ilmore Engineering with Mercedes-Benz. They were great friends of mine, and they put me in touch with the Bentonhausen team and Pac West and these different teams that are running Mercedes engines, and it just grew from there. But there was a lot of kind of turning your head, looking at me like, "What? This is kind of silly."
That's what I was getting ready to say. So when you walk in, one, you're the new kid.
Yeah.
And two, you want us to do what?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, think about it back in NASCAR when it all really started. The Rainbow Warriors.
Yeah.
Right. Gordon's team. How hard those guys, trained and all of that stuff.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because before the Rainbow Warriors, they had Rusty Wallace's over the wall gang, and that's how I got started. My grandfather sent me an article out of National Speed Sport News. Remember that when it was actually
Chris Economac,
a real paper, yeah.
And they had done an article on Rusty's crew being the fastest pit crew, and they were doing step aerobics. So they were already doing that, and that's what gave me the idea. So it was kind of picking up steam as they went, and now it's a whole industry of guys flying in and working on the pit crew, and there's coaches that all they do is work with the pit crew. It's that critical. It definitely was something that took a little more time, but it took a few guys just to kind of John Anderson from Pac West Racing kind of champion the cause a little bit. Having Roger believe in what I was doing was huge, and it's always good to have on your resume. This started with Roger Penske.
Right.
It isn't a nobody, and so it helped. They
look at that and they're like, "Oh, another thing he was doing that we didn't know about. No wonder he keeps kicking our ass."
Yeah.
Right, nonstop.
And so it just continued to pick up steam. But with those drivers doing well, then you started seeing drivers that what came out of nowhere that were curious about it. I remember working with Josh Wise and Brad Sweet and those guys way back when, and it was just one of these things where they weren't sure it was going to help, but they knew it made them feel better. Larry Dixon came in, and I began working with Larry Dixon, and I remember Larry walked to my office, NHR top fuel driver, and I said, "Look, man, I got to be square with you. I don't know what I can do to help you, because I don't understand drag racing at all."
And now how many do you have?
Well, we only have
we've had him in
now. We have JR. I mean, we don't need any more, right? We have J.R. Todd.
You got J.R. Todd. By the way, those two Wallies over there are from J.R. Todd.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
You used to have Bernstein, but then,
Well, Bernstein was coming in with Morgan. But over the years, I had Morgan and Brandon and these guys. But Larry said, I just, I'm getting up in age. I just want to feel better. He saw that ahead of a lot of other people. Now, you're always going to have the argument in every single sport. There's the there's the anti-fitness, and they're successful. And I've done so many lectures.
Tony Stewart.
Everybody will come in and say, "Well, what about Tony Stewart? Or what about Juan Montoya?
Ken Schrader." He explained it to us earlier.
Or John Force, or
exactly.
and it's hard for me to dispute that because they are just God-given talent.
But that is a one in very, very few.
Yeah. Right.
There's a lot that have to fight for it. And listen, Dixon is at the absolute top of his game. Yeah. I mean, he is unbelievable how good he is, what shape he's in, and it is hilarious when Hinchcliffe was in here. He's like, we're gonna make up some wristbands.
He said, and we're going to make up a shirt that says, "What would Scott Dixon do?" He said, every time we go in there, and they say, "How much weight do you want to put on?" And he's like, "I don't know. What would Scott Dixon do?"
Yeah, because he's like, Alex is going to put it up. No, just leave it out. We're going to use that same stuff right over there as soon as Dixon's done with it.
It's unbelievable.
It's got to be cool working. I mean, we talk about A personalities. I mean, that is A personalities at the highest level. They are so competitive that they want to beat each other. No matter, it doesn't matter just in the race car, just at the gym, wherever, walk into the mailbox, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and you can see, Scott sets the bar very, very high, and he has, and he will step his game up to beat someone else, even if it's by a second or two. He'll quietly just go in. We'll put a time up for some particular activity or endeavor, and then it'll be on the board, and then you'll see the next guy walk in and just look at his head. and he knows that to even get close to that, he's not even gotten close to that yet, and it's already, and he's gone his
Dixon
maximum.
just twisting the knife in their back.
Yeah, and it's just and that is, he's been like that. It really got like that probably around 2005. And I remember when we first did his first half Ironman triathlon, and that's when I started seeing that I could always beat him in just about everything, and that's when I started seeing his maturity level and his physical stature growing, as a driver, as a person. And then since he, when he married Emma Dixon in 2008, I mean, he's untouchable. She kind of made him the complete person. And now he's got this innate fire that you see all the drivers have it, but you're right. They all come in and they don't even, James is in phenomenal shape for the average person, but there's just a next level. I think a guy who's kind of trying to knock on the door and has that mental, Alexander Rossi. He's strong and he's very fit, and he I don't want to say he looks up to Scott in a big way, but Scott also knows.
But that's easy to do.
That's easy to do.
He's tough.
Yeah, and so I think that it motivates. It's really unique when you see these younger junior drivers look up to a Scott Dixon and they say, "Man, if I could just do what he's done," but they're so far down the pike from doing that they're 15 years from getting to that level, or 10 years from that level. But then you see the same viewpoint from drivers that are competing on the same tracks as a guy like Scott Dixon, and they're still trying to achieve what he's achieved. And I think that's in the gym, on the track, and I think that's just a unique thing you don't see in this day and age. The amount of respect and admiration for what your competitor is doing, and just kind of bow down in deference and say, hey, I know I'm not going to win in this situation. I don't mean on track, but I'm going to be as damn close as I can. And,
right.
and you hear about that saying, no one is ever perfect, but if you work hard enough and strive for greatness, you'll be excellent.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, the whole thing of it is he's great in all those things you mentioned, but he's great in life too. He's just a good dude. I mean, and he's got the right amount of arrogance, not too much, which those guys they got a pretty big deal to do there, but always friendly and.
Yeah,
try to tackle me in the middle of the Chili Bowl when you were with him there, and
there have been moments. That was a fun weekend.
So we're going to take a quick break here as we spend some time with the president of PitFit, Jim Leo. We'll be right back in just a moment. This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by Rhino Classifieds. Tired of all those ads and random stuff that shows up when you're looking to buy or sell your car parts? Rhino Classifieds was created just for you. Welcome to a streamlined buying and selling app created by racers for racers and race fans. Modified cars, classic cars, race cars, that special big block you need, the trailer to move your baby around the country in. We got you at rhino.co. Once again, welcome back to The Skinny. We have Jim Leo on with us, and he is responsible for a number of the athletes that compete in motorsports to be at the top of their game. Thanks for taking the time, Jim, and talk to me about the business itself. Give yourself a little promo here. Give us we'll attach some video to it. So let's show the people and tell the people what you actually do to make a driver a better driver. It's such a matter of fact, we were just talking about it with Kenny Schrader a little bit earlier today, and we see him at 65, soon to be 66 years old. And I said, how is it that somebody of your age can get into a sprint car and rip for 500 laps? Is it just muscles that you've used your entire life? I mean, he clearly doesn't look cut, but it's something that his body's adapted to over the course of time. But as you get these drivers, the muscles that they use are so unique. It's only in driving. How do you actually help them?
Well, I mean, the thing you have to realize is that there's been research has shown that the driver's ability to process information is superior to the average person. There's research showing that. And they take a group of drivers, and they take the average people, and they do processing skill sets. And the drivers, whether it's accumulated over time or it's innate from when they were born, I can't really say, but they are able to respond and react and process information and data quicker and respond to it. We train them to do that. That's something that we do with a lot of cognitive training drills. We do this under stress. A lot of it's taken from the military with Navy SEALs and such, who have to respond, obviously, in very traumatic, high-intensity situations. We do those same things with the drivers. So, I think that is something that doesn't diminish over time with age. It does diminish somewhat, but it's kind of like, you're already at the absolute top above the average person. So you're diminishing down to where you're at a lower level is still far superior to the average person. Muscles are, depending on the series you're going to drive in, there's different things being used. I had a talk with Terry Trammell this morning, who everybody, obviously world-renowned surgeon, and I talked to Tim Pullman, who was James Hinchcliffe's doctor when he had his bad crash, and for an article I'm writing about the core and everything. And we talked about some of the things that go on with the driver and the muscles that are used and all. It's amazing the different types of cars you drive. Everything's different. Whatever you drive, it's a little bit different the way we work with someone. So somebody who is in a sprint car versus someone who's in an Indy car versus someone who races karts, there's a foundation of training that we'll do, but then it changes depending on your series. Someone who is in a car where you're not locked into the seat as well. So, for example, a sprint car versus an Indy car. Indy car, they're so tight in the car, there's no movement.
I mean, it's a poured seat.
Yeah, it's a poured seat.
Yeah. It's a cocoon for sure.
You don't want a whole lot of movement in there. Look at a sprint car, and I don't care how tight you're in there, you're going to move. So your core strength is more important in a sprint car than it probably is in an Indy car. The less support you have in the seat, the less you're tied down, the more activation there is of the core, which if your core isn't strong enough, what happens is a lot of that workload gets transferred to other parts of your body, your shoulders, your arms, and then that gets fatigued. So there's a lot of working pieces with the way we do things with the drivers. But for the most part, the goal is to make them as safe as possible. And then the performance is, we don't advertise it, but it's kind of secondary. We want the drivers to be able to survive a crash. We want them to be able to respond to situations on the track faster than the average driver. We want all these factors to take part in their racing career, so they have a long racing career.
So it's not just a jazzercise class, one size fits all?
Thursdays.
Hey,
that's the one we could go to.
Hey, he had us doing hot yoga. Bernstein and I still talk about the hot yoga.
Yeah.
Well, I got news for you. I mean, I've attempted yoga a couple of times, and it's brutal. I mean, I'm talking about beginner's yoga.
You thought you were going to see that little green
brutal,
guy.
Man. To watch an advanced yoga class is pretty impressive.
Yeah,
I mean, when you realize how difficult it is to do.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you this. This goes back a little further than the next one I'll talk about, but Shane Mills. There's a lot of a lot to be said about what Jim was just talking about. Shane was working out with Jim when that all happened, when he got in the horrific crash in the Silver Crown car at Terre Haute. And the strength that he had in his body and the endurance and everything to go with it, there was a lot of, they point blank said they probably would have died otherwise, just because of the severity of the crash and things like that. So, of course, the other one, of note, just that I'm thinking of is, of course, Hinchcliffe.
Yeah.
And so, walk us through a little bit of that. Of course, we heard his side. We know a lot of it.
Sure.
Of course, I was there when it happened and knew that it was pretty bad right away when I saw him nosing over that things were going bad pretty quick. So
another name I want to throw in there, and I don't know, we might not have been working out with you, but I remember the accident, and I remember the recovery time was so short after an accident that was so severe, and that was Sebastian Bourdais. he had a nasty crash, and he recovered.
Yeah, right in turn 2 by our suite.
So quickly. Yeah. I mean, just a few months later, I mean, same scenario. I was like, I don't know if the guy would ever walk again, and here he is swimming, just a few months later.
Yeah.
But it was all because of his prep, not because of the aftermath.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There's research that shows that the more fit you are, the more likely you are to recover quicker from whether it's surgery or whether it's an accident or that kind of a thing. And with James's situation, it was. I just talked to his doctor, Tim Pullman, this morning. We just talked about that, and he told me that when they got off the elevator, he had his hand on James's wrist, and he lost his pulse when he got off the elevator. I didn't know that, and so he said that they have basically, once he feels that, you have 90 seconds to get him alive again. Yeah. And they got that done. And Dr. Pullman has said that James had that rod go, through basically his pelvis and come out through his abdomen. And the fact that he was able to recover from that whole process of recovery, we worked really hard at making sure that it was done properly. But the fact that he was able to come back from that quick, you had to have a fair amount of fitness and a fair amount of strength to be able to withstand that kind of demand on the body and come back the way he did. The average person, it doesn't work that way. The body has to develop muscle that it doesn't even have. Well, the muscle's already there. You've just lost a little bit of it. It's been compromised in one area, but everything else is still intact. So the fact that he was able to come back and we were able to do so many things that didn't compromise the injury, and that's the idea. The reason we do the things with the rehab is our drivers, they need to get back in the car. There's a lot of concern about losing your ride, and so rather than to take them to conventional physical therapy, which is going to say, okay, this is a 12-week process, it's going to take 12 weeks to get through this, we speed that up under the doctor's care, of course, but we push the boundaries as much as possible, and it's always been that way, whether it's Joey Saldana.
Right. Joey, I forgot about
Joey, and I mean, Dario, I've so many people, Pietro Fittipaldi, there's so many drivers that we've worked with, and it's just a process that we have so many things that we can do with them that don't affect the injury, so that instead of waiting till the injury is completely healed and then working on the rest of it, we work on everything else, and we work on the injury at the same time, but at a lower intensity, and therefore by the time the injury heals up, the package is ready. It's done.
It's amazing, because how many times have you seen somebody get in a bed on just say a regular car crash, maybe a mountain bike crash, whatever the case may be, and they go do this process. They have the surgery and they're mending back, and it takes them months. And over the course of the months, they've lost so much muscle.
Right.
It seems like they almost never get it back. And these drivers that you're talking about, they're back, and like you said, at full strength. In the span of a year, you'd never know what happened to them. It's mind-boggling.
And
it's unbelievable.
It is, and when that whole deal happened with Hinchcliffe, and I told him when he was here, I said, I pulled some of the staff from IMS over, and I said, you guys need to create a public service day, and they're like, well, what do you mean? I said, that guy's alive because of those rescue guys. I said, you should have police and fire out here honoring those guys, because those are the people who get that done.
Right.
They didn't quite take it where they should, because I think, what's all fire companies want to do? They want to have a chili cook-off. They don't care if it's 150 degrees outside.
Yeah, they've been there.
Exactly right.
They've been there.
Right. And, the other side is have the burn house out there where these kids can understand what it is, how to get out of a situation like that. So I wish they would do more with it and move it up, and maybe in the years to come, maybe it will. But I was of course, my relationship with Hinchcliffe was, from your facility and knowing him there and talking to him, and a good guy, just a good down to earth guy. And I was like, they just saved his life, at that point to get him to the next stage.
It's amazing. And that's what Dr. Pullman said. He said basically James Hinchcliffe saved his own life in a way, just because of his preparation and his attitude and everything. And it's obviously a lot of people were involved, but there's just there's so much now being tied into safety in the medical side of motorsports. And there's the International Council on Motorsport Science. I'm part of that. And there's so many doctors now that we have seminars on safety and extraction, fire, and all these areas. And now it's starting to get more into the physiology and the human performance side of it. So, it took a long time for that to happen. But if you were to say this was going to be around 30 years ago,
right.
it wasn't there.
Yeah.
I mean, Dr. Sid Watkins over in F1, who passed away a couple years ago, he was the guy that really started everything.
With Senna and all that.
Yeah.
They were the ones that were really close,
he's
right?
the guy.
Yeah.
And I got to meet him. I got to do a presentation for him years ago.
Wow.
And he came up and he said, he's a super guy. He just phenomenal guy. But he said that's the best presentation. He told, because it was all about training and no one was doing that yet. And this is back in 2002, I don't even know when, it was a long time ago, but he's the guy that started it. And now it's to the point now where you have doctors specializing, and you have like the IndyCar medical team that travels around, and the drivers will tell you that when they see one of those guys poke their head into the cockpit, they feel better. They know they're going to be okay, and they'd rather see that than anywhere else. And if you look at the stories of Dr. Trammell and Dr. Olvey and some of these things, and I just bow down to what they can do. I mean, we can do so much in preparing them, but when it comes down to it, if they're not there on the bad accident, it ain't going to work out.
Yeah, they're the ones putting them back together.
Yeah, I don't care how fit they are. If there's a certain point where, man, this is it. They've got to put it back together to keep the bleeding from continuing. So that's it. But it takes a whole team. It takes the safety crew and everybody involved in the track to do that. And you're right. I mean, I'm in awe of that whole industry.
Yeah, and
heroes.
And Hinchcliffe talking about how he had to plan his day out, how many steps he was going to take. All right, I got to go to the bathroom X amount of times, so that's this amount of steps.
Because they didn't want him to walk.
They told him, not overdoing it, which I thought was pretty wild. I thought it was pretty interesting, and knowing
he's a racehorse, right? So they had to pull the racehorse back because he wanted to go and get better. And they said, you're going to make it worse, man. And he said he literally had to make it a competition with himself to not go. Like, how could he, like you said, how could he go so many steps inside of that house without overdoing it?
Which is wild.
I mean, they want to do well. They want to get back in the car right away. And so we had guidelines with James to follow. And in the beginning, it wasn't that difficult because he was so gassed over anything he did. He would say, I can't go anymore. But we would just follow specific heart rates and intensity levels and making sure that we didn't have any problems. And then if he was ready to go further, I'd call Dr. Pullman and say, here's what we want to do. Yes, you can do this. And so it was one of these things. We didn't leave it up to James to make the decision because, he wanted to do more and more and more. But he knew going in that it was a miracle if he could get back in the car that soon. And we had timelines. He gave me specific dates early on. I'm going to get back in the car on this date. If I'm ready, if I can get back in the car on this date. And we're called upon to make decisions like that at times. I remember Casey Kane calling me about Joey Saldana. And I mean, every time Joey went to Eldora, I was just either won the race or he left in a helicopter. It was one thing after another.
Yeah.
I remember Casey calling, asking if it was okay for Joey to get back in the car, if I thought. And I said, look, I'm giving my professional opinion. He's done all the things that we've been asked to do. He is so far ahead of where he should be at this point. I would feel comfortable saying that he's physically prepared to get back in the car. And he did. He went out, and I think that was somewhere in the, and he won that first race back. But it was cool to have Casey call to say, is Joey ready?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, we had doctors confirming that. It wasn't. I wasn't. God making a decision on something like that. But
and how about the mental fortitude of these guys to get back in the car and then go like it never happened? And the best example again is Hinch. And when we had him on the show, I mean, for him to have that accident there and then come back a year later and put it on the pole, I mean, and then and you really, man, I don't know how to help the fans at home understand the intensity of pole day at the 500.
Right.
But when you're standing there, I mean, goosebumps right here, dude. I mean, I was just standing there Sunday next to Dixon's car, and I'm watching Colton take off, and I'm standing next to Dixon's car thinking, my God, I mean, I can't believe, first of all, I'm standing here next to the baddest Indy car in the land and the baddest team in the land. I mean, we just qualified number one the day before and now going out to do it again. But the intensity level of qualifying day, pole day, is just inexplainable to me. I don't know the proper words to help somebody understand it that's never been there. So to watch him go out after that crash that he had and hang it out for 4 laps, it's unbelievable to me that somebody can be that strong mentally.
Well, it's something that all I can say is that they're competitors. They live for it. And at some point they decide they've had enough and they walk away. And I think there is a point where they just say, you know what, this isn't worth it anymore. But until they get to that day, every single driver we've ever worked with is the same way. They just want to keep going faster and be the next guy, and they're super competitive. And I don't think you can, create that. We've dealt with drivers of all levels throughout the years, and you have some that are, financially well enough off they do this because they like to do it and they don't really need it. And then you have some that, I've always said there's 2 kinds of race car drivers. There's drivers who like to be a race car driver, and there's those that like to drive cars. And the guys that like to drive cars will compete in lawnmowers.
Right.
They'll compete in anything, the
Tony Stewart.
Totally.
And then there's others who, and there's been successful drivers like this, but that they just love the trappings of being a race car driver.
Right.
And there's two types. And I think that you can't make one the other. I think that if you're either born with it or you're not. And that's why you have, that's why only 1% of what high school athletes make in the NFL, because there's that tiny fraction that have what it takes to go to the next level.
It's just like it is in business, where you're sitting there and you go, I did all these things right. Why is this not happening? And, there's some luck that's involved in it, and it's the right place, the right times, and just a lot of other things that go along with it. But what you're doing for these guys and gals is second to none. And I mean, it's pretty wild to see.
We're going to take a quick break here, spending some time getting the behind-the-scenes looks at some of the drivers here with Jim Leo of PitFit. We'll be right back. This segment of The Skinny is brought to you by Dream Giveaway. Dream Giveaway has been giving away high-end American muscle cars to raise money for charity since 2007. Dream Giveaway is known for giving away classic and new muscle and paying the federal taxes so the winners don't have to. For $25, you can jump in the game, and part of that goes to charity. You'll have a chance at winning some of the coolest cars on the planet. Check it out at dreamgiveaway.com. Welcome back to The Skinny. We're with Jim Leo of PitFit and giving us some insights of what he's seen from some of the top athlete drivers on the planet. And boy, it has been truly exceptional to watch them make their comebacks as we proceed forward, coming out of the 90s, as you talked about. You've seen it from its infancy up to where it is now. The technology is changing by the day. Where do you see it going in the future?
Well, I think you're going to see much more the mental side of it. I think you're going to, we started years ago working with the neurocognitive side of things and trying to work on the processing skills of the drivers and enhance that. So now you can take a driver who is at a certain level and try to enhance that a little bit higher. I think at some point in years past, you basically, a driver would get to a certain level and that's as high as he could go. As you have more and more science-based research done on racing, you can learn how to help them be safer in the car, to help them with heat tolerance, tolerate G loads better. respond quicker under stress, all these areas. And I think you're going to see more and more research coming out on racing and determining how to basically make, a machine driving a machine. You'll see more and more of that. So I think you're going to see that continuing to rise up as the industry continues to grow. More and more money is involved in it. You look at IndyCar now. There's no weaknesses. It's such a strong series right now, and it's getting harder and harder for people to just show up with a checkbook and get into the series, because it's so strong that you can basically pick and choose who you want to put in the car. So I think that's going to be something you're going to see more and more, just the science behind what they're doing with the drivers and with the cars, and we want to be a part of that.
We've been kind of focused. The conversation seems to wrap around IndyCar, and you have a lot of those athletes inside working out with you. But when you take a look at Supercross and how physical that is, making those decisions late in those races, is there a way, drag racing, the reaction times that are so imperative, when all the other stress is going on, stuff that they're trying to think about as the drivers get tired. I know you have tests and you have exercises that you work with these guys. Do you measure a performance? Do you measure in percentages, like I'm sure each person individually, but is there a way to quantify some of the exercises that they're doing to tell if their cognitive skills are getting better?
Yeah, we've been working on something. We started doing this beginning of last year with a company out of Sweden it's an app called Soma NPT, but we didn't tell anybody about it all of last season. All of our drivers were using this, and they basically have discovered this thing, brain endurance training, which what their research has shown is that the brain has to be trained similar to a muscle. You have to fatigue it. So now instead of doing these, 60 seconds of a light drill or something, now we're having the drivers do 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes of the same drill over and over. And it's as simple, does an arrow point this way or this way? But as you continue to do that, the brain gets tired and you start making more and more mistakes. So we've done that a lot in the last year, and we're able to measure their improvements on that. And that's been probably one of the biggest changes we've made to our program is adopting that. Then we can put them under stressful situations. So now this same app, you can do this with voice activation. So they can be on an activity with the heart rate up and calling out the commands to the whatever it's asking you to do on the app. So that is something. Put them in a sauna and have them do this for 30 minutes straight, the same drill at 140 degrees. Those are the things that we've been able to measure and determine these are in fact helping them in their drill, and then their performance on track. It's hard to correlate that because there's so many variables involved in that. The car setup. I don't care if Scott Dixon got into maybe a car that didn't qualify. He's not going to be on pole. I don't care how good he is. You just can't do it. You saw that in Formula One when Lewis Hamilton was out and they put in a guy driving for Williams. He almost damn near put it on pole. He almost won the race because the car is so good that Hamilton is phenomenal driver, but a lot of it is the car. So those are variables that we can't say that you're going to win races because you use our program or you do these things, but we just look at the checkbox of eliminate these concerns.
But it's a way to measure yourself and to work on making yourself better. You mentioned the SEALs before. I think of the SEALs going through Hell Week, and I know they keep them up for so many hours till they completely deplete them. They're so fatigued, and then they want them to remember math equations or some sort of equation to see how their brain is going to function underneath that fatigue. It's a great way to measure somebody, I would guess, to see if they're good enough to pass. But how do you make that better now? And I'm sure they probably have ways, and I'm certainly not inside of that. But that's what I'm looking at. That's what intrigues me, and that's what you guys are working on. You're finding ways to do that, to actually make them better under those scenarios. It's super, super cool. It's very intriguing.
There's a long way to go. I mean, measuring, starting to look at measuring brain waves and brain activity and seeing how to look at the neural pathways and enhance those to make those stronger. And it's just going to take time, and it's going to take innovation. But the technology is out there. We just continue to find as others do, find ways to make them better. As much as, that's what we do.
Yeah, it's very impressive what you guys do.
Look at me, what he's done for me.
I mean, look at the room for growth you have.
Hello. Hey, out of the park. Just tossed her right up today.
Rico's got a softball build. He's a hell of a hitter. You look at those big softball players that are.
Right.
You better be a home run because I'm not running this one out.
I'm not running it. I'm running to the cooler.
Babe Ruth, man, knock her out of the park and just jog around. Man. It's all good.
Running to the cooler, getting a drink. I'm not running them bases. That's it. Done with it.
So you are going to expand. You do have a new facility. It's not necessarily open just yet in North Carolina, but it's coming soon.
Yeah, we've done a partnership with a facility in North Carolina. We'll be announcing that soon, and we'll be accessible to the racing community. We already do a big online coaching program. So we have drivers all over the world with our online coaching program that we work with everywhere from Dubai, Australia. We have some South American drivers, but we remotely coach drivers all over the world. So the reach it's there. We're just going to continue to try to grow it from there, and then the expansion level with motorsports facilities, clubs around the country, and hopefully around the world. I think that as we continue to evolve this concept, it's just going to grow bigger and bigger.
So for the fans that are listening in and do not have access to video, where can they find you?
You can just go to pitfit.com.
Super easy.
Real easy. And the funny story on that is when I first had a website, the Yahoo that designed my website, which wasn't Rico, by the way, way before Rico's team.
I wouldn't know how to do it.
The guy, we tried to register pitfit.com, and he waited too long, and so a pit bull training company got it for 3 years. So we had to have a different email or different web domain until they let it expire. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'll never forget that. So now we have it. We're not letting it go.
Yeah.
So just
and they are not training pit bulls.
We're not. We still get calls. We still get emails about that.
Trust me, we get it. We've been battered around in this whole website game here.
I'll bet.
Domain name game here for the past few months. So
yeah,
super cool stuff. Any hope for a fat guy over here?
There's always hope.
Don't talk about I'm right here. I'm right here, bud.
Hey, I got knee replacement surgery coming up here probably next March or so. Somewhere, I haven't scheduled it yet, but somewhere in there. I did the MRIs and they said, yeah, you're going to get new knees if you want to keep walking. So
perfect.
So, honestly, my initial thought was I need to start working out now. I need to lose weight. I need to get my legs in shape. I mean, it really was along the same train of thought that these drivers are, the better shape I can be in going in, the easier it's going to be coming out.
And we have a private membership program, which we keep it very small, but it's not just racing. We do have we don't really advertise it, but it's a private membership program that we do have, and it's all inclusive. So we do work with the general population. We don't ever want to take away from our passion or desire, which is the motorsports community. But we do have a time during the day when we will work with the general population.
Super cool stuff. Congratulations on the success, and we wish you nothing but more of it in the future. But I think it's safe to say the foundation has been laid, and you're making huge strides. And thank you for all that you do for all the race car drivers, and the people outside of the industry as well to keep them as healthy and strong as they are.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jim Leo of PitFit. Look him up at pitfit.com. Thanks for being with us here on The Skinny. This episode has been brought to you by Toyota, Rhino Classifieds, Dream Giveaway, and General Tire. For the latest in sunglasses, optical frames, accessories, and apparel, be sure to check out fatheads.com. That's Fatheads with a Z. Production facilities provided by Fatheads Eyewear Studios. All rights reserved.